The ancient Sumerian observation clearly matches the findings of modern high-tech astronomy. Did a Sumerian astronomer observe the asteroid that destroyed ancient Sodom? Could this be the explanation for the Bible's description of fire from the sky? The answer may lie not only in the planisphere and the book of Genesis, but in computer modeling of the ancient night sky.
Destination.
The fiery end of Sodom and Gomorrah may be corroborated by a single artifact, the Sumerian planisphere. It accurately details the positions of the stars, planets, and constellations of the night sky, and describes a strange object resembling an asteroid. Astronomers Alan Bond and Mark Hemsel believe they have translated the planisphere correctly and have traced the actual impact site of the asteroid.
We make the assumption that the astronomer is standing somewhere in southern Iraq. Therefore, from the information on the planisphere, we can construct a trajectory, a trial trajectory, derived from software that is used for predicting rocket ascent trajectories and re-entry trajectories.
But there's a bizarre twist. The data at first seems to have no connection to the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah. When that trajectory is traced forward, it strikes a strange target for a Bible disaster. Not in Israel, but in northern Europe.
The object hit the Austrian Alps at a place called Kofels in the Salashi Valley.
According to Bond and Hemsel, there is no meteor crater in Kofels, Austria, because the asteroid exploded in an airburst several hundred meters above the ground. It has happened before, in Tunguska, Siberia.
In 1908, there was a near-Earth object impact in Tunguska, Siberia, which is well known, and devastating area about 50 kilometers, and was an airburst explosion. This object that we're dealing with is 1,000 times greater.
Like the Tunguska asteroid, the biblical era event involved a massive airburst.
The asteroid itself was already in the process of disintegration. That's the reason that there is no actual crater.
And the biblical destruction did not come from this impact, but from the aftermath.
The object, when it hit Kofels, must have produced a massive plume. And this plume is what we suspect explains the myth of Sodom and Gomorrah.
By applying data models from astronomy and weapons research, Bond and Hemsel have created a minute-by-minute scenario for the asteroid strike and its effects on the planet. The 1.25 kilometer asteroid descended toward Earth in a low trajectory, observed in Sumeria and the Dead Sea. It entered the atmosphere over Greece, turning into a fireball as it crossed Europe, finally erupting in an airburst over the Alps. 100 times larger than the world's most powerful nuclear weapon. The explosion on Kofels would have created a mushroom cloud of rock, dirt, and earth. A massive plume of debris that arcs into the sky for hundreds of miles along the asteroid's trajectory.
Billions of tons would have been ejected back at maybe 5 kilometers per second out across the Mediterranean. And we'd expect the plume to probably go up 900 kilometers.
From there, the debris begins to fall back to Earth, dropping in a broad swath 1,500 miles away from the blast site, centered on the Dead Sea.
When these plumes re-enter the atmosphere, having arced into space, what they do is they friction heat the atmosphere. And for about a second, the ground temperature goes to 400 degrees.
Anybody that was directly under the re-entry of the plume would have ignited instantly. Hair, clothing, exposed flesh would all have gone. Anybody out there would have suffered horrific burns and would have died pretty much straight away within the hour. Probably an extremely unpleasant death.
There would be few survivors in a massive plume re-entry radius centered on the Dead Sea. In fact, the data on the planisphere is so accurate that Bond and Hemsel believed they could find the exact date of the observation.
There's modern software packages that you can run on a PC that enable you to recreate night skies going this far back in time.
Bond and Hemsel recreated the star and planet positions as marked on the planisphere. Then they painstakingly tried to match it to the known data of the night sky.
Mark drove himself insane for 3 months by modeling every possible configuration of planets for 1,500 years around that date in order to find out if he could find a configuration of planets similar to that which appears on the tablet. And he did. It was quite remarkable.
One date literally seemed to match up with all the known data.
Well, the final date that we came to was 29th of June, 3123 BC.
If Bond and Hemsel's translation is correct, then the planisphere is hard evidence of one of the greatest worldwide catastrophes of human civilization. Its date, June 29, 3123 BCE. Can this be the exact date of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah? And if the planisphere can detail such an exact date, shouldn't there be other evidence of a massive catastrophe? In fact, there is. And this evidence comes not from fire, but from ice. Can science explain one of the most compelling stories of the Bible? An ancient artifact suggests that the fiery destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah may have literally come from an asteroid strike. If astronomers Mark Hemsel and Alan Bond are correct, the asteroid impact described by the Sumerian planisphere would have had worldwide effect. A 10,000 megaton blast from an asteroid should leave more evidence than simply a strange tale of fire from the sky in the first book of the Bible. New evidence has recently emerged, and it comes not from fire, but from ice. Ohio State University is home to one of the world's top paleoclimatology departments. Teams from the Byrd Polar Observatory cross the globe in search of ancient ice. Under Professor Lonnie Thompson, the university's expeditions remove ice cores from glaciers in Peru, Tibet, Greenland, and Antarctica.
The ice fields of the world record a history. The ice preserves a seasonal record of climate change. It goes back thousands of years, and it records anything that was in the atmosphere.
After being drilled from the world's oldest glaciers, the ice cores are taken to Ohio State's enormous cold room.
This one is from pure Gangri from central Tibet, and if you look carefully at the core, you can see the air bubbles.
Tiny bubbles in the ice also preserve the air from ancient times, which can be released and studied in the lab to determine the temperature and climate thousands of years ago. But there was one particular layer of ice that caught Dr. Thompson's eye. It began when he discovered plant material at the base of a retreating glacier in Peru.
Right at the base of a 30-meter high ice wall, I found this plant deposit. By taking a pocket knife and looking at these plants, they were perfectly preserved. that you should be able to identify them and date them.
The plants, when carbon dated, were 5,200 years old, and oddly enough, they seem to have been flash frozen, suddenly covered with snow or ice, and perfectly preserved for millennia. When Thomson looked at other ice cores, he found evidence of a massive climate collapse, a sudden freeze that took place around the world at the same period.
Since then, we have been looking at our archives from the ice core records, and it turns out this was a global event. We find it in the ice cores in Tibet. We find it on every continent in many different archives, and they all date around 5,200 years in age.
According to the ice core evidence, in northern Africa, a lush and fertile region suddenly dried up to become the Sahara Desert. In Chile, formerly tropical regions became inundated with snow and frozen for millennia. In the Middle East, fertile regions turned to desert and civilizations collapsed.
I think this particular event was large scale, and it impacted humans on many different continents. We've only started to look at this event, but we've been really amazed at the scale. So what happened at that time? What can cause an abrupt change of climate over a large area of the planet?
The Sumerian planisphere may supply the missing information. Carbon dating has an error calibration of plus or minus 100 years, putting the sudden freeze 5,200 years ago in the same time frame as the asteroid recorded in the Sumerian planisphere, 3123 BCE. An asteroid 3/4 of a mile wide would have created a debris plume and cloud of ash that would circle the entire planet, blocking the sun for months and causing a massive worldwide climate collapse. Large portions of the Earth would suddenly freeze. Other parts would turn to barren desert for millennia. The asteroid's impact was so large that it became the stuff of legend and scripture, preserved in the Bible's tale of Sodom's fiery destruction. If this interlocking set of theories is accurate, then we can now explain the truth behind the biblical destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. In our quest for the truth behind Sodom and Gomorrah, we have searched the biblical text, archaeological and geological evidence, and ancient astronomy.